Hollywood has always thrived on secrets, on lies, on betrayals hiding beneath the golden lights and polished smiles. But nothing has shaken fans more than the shocking silence surrounding Blake Lively and the storm it has created around Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. What was supposed to be a fairy tale engagement announcement has turned into a nightmare of suspicion, betrayal, and unanswered questions. The glittering world of fame now cracked wide open as fans begin to wonder how deep the lies really go and whether the friendships we believed were unbreakable were nothing more than illusions built to sell a perfect image the moment the cameras flashed and the world erupted with news of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce stepping into a new chapter together fans should have been celebrating. But instead, the whispers began to grow louder and louder because in the middle of this shining moment, one voice was missing. A voice that for years stood closest to Taylor Swift. The voice of Blake Lively. And when silence becomes louder than words, people notice, people question, people speculate. Because this is Hollywood, and nothing is ever truly silent. Nothing is ever truly innocent. So as the images of Taylor and Travis went viral, across every corner of the internet, the silence of Blake became the center of the storm. What once was seen as a friendship unshakable, built on loyalty, built on shared laughter, built on years of public appearances and inside jokes, suddenly looked fragile, broken, and false. And fans began to dig through every detail, every interview, every clip, every photograph from years past, desperate to uncover the cracks that were hiding beneath the surface. They began to connect the dots, moments when Blake appeared distant, moments when her smiles seemed forced, moments when her body language betrayed discomfort, and now in the blinding spotlight of Taylor and Travis' love story. These old fragments feel like proof, as if the betrayal had always been, hiding in plain sight. The truth is that Hollywood thrives on narratives, and for years the narrative was Taylor and Blake, inseparable best friends, unstoppable, a bond that looked unbreakable. But behind every narrative is a machine, and behind every machine are motives, power, envy, competition, and control. Some insiders whispered that Blake resented how everything in their friendship eventually became about Taylor. How even when Blake had her own successes, her own films, her own fashion moments, the headlines somehow always circled back to Taylor Swift, and that resentment quietly grew heavier each year. Others claimed that it was deeper than envy, that it was betrayal at a personal level. Stories that never reached the tabloid stories, that were buried under the weight of non-disclosure agreements and powerful lawyers. But what truly set this storm ablaze was not just the engagement. It was the silence, because silence is never neutral. Silence is a weapon. Silence is a scream without words, and in the unforgiving world of Hollywood, silence is read as guilt. Silence is read as surrender. Silence is read as proof. So the question began to echo everywhere. Why would Blake stay silent during the happiest moment of her best friend's life? Why would she vanish from the narrative? Unless there was something darker hidden in the shadows. The speculation became wildfire, with every fan theory more dramatic than the last timelines of their friendship. Dissected clips, replayed interviews, studied words twisted into evidence, and soon the court of public opinion had made its verdict. This was no mere absence, this was betrayal. Blake had turned her back on Taylor, or perhaps Taylor had pushed her away. And either way, the silence spoke, louder than any statement could. The tragedy here is that both women once painted a picture of loyalty that fans held onto like hope, because in a world of temporary Hollywood alliances, theirs looked real, theirs looked genuine, theirs looked lasting. And now that illusion lies shattered, and the fallout is brutal. Because in Hollywood, the end of a friendship is not private, it is not quiet. It is a spectacle dissected by millions, amplified by algorithms, replayed until every angle has been exhausted, and every theory has been shouted. And while Taylor rises higher than ever before, embraced by love, adored by fans, commanding an empire, with Travis Kelce at her side, Blake is left standing in shadows, surrounded by silence, trapped in a narrative she no longer controls. And that is the most dangerous place to be, because once you lose control of the story, Hollywood decides for you, the fans decide for you, the world decides for you. And in that loss of control, the image of Blake Lively crumbles, piece by piece, leaving behind not the adored star, the admired friend, but a figure painted with betrayal, envy, and silence. And as this storm grows, it becomes clearer that this is not just about friendship. This is about power. This is about loyalty. This is about survival in a world where silence is the loudest confession as the days turned into weeks after the announcement of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce engagement. The silence from Blake Lively only deepened, and the deeper it grew, the louder. The questions became fans began piecing together fragments of old interviews where Blake spoke about friendship and loyalty and support, and when replayed through the lens of betrayal, those words no longer sounded warm, they sounded hollow. They sounded like veiled shots at someone she once called her best friend. Some even resurfaced clips of Blake on red carpets where her smile looked tight, where her gaze seemed distant when Taylor was speaking. And suddenly every micro-expression, every tilt of her head became ammunition in the narrative that Blake was never truly the friend she pretended to be. Insiders whispered that this fracture between them did not begin overnight. It was a slow burn, a gradual tearing apart that stretched back years to moments the public dismissed as nothing at the time, like when Taylor released her groundbreaking albums and Blake stayed oddly muted, or when rumors of tension at private parties emerged only to be buried by the overwhelming noise. Of Taylor's triumphs, whispers also suggested that Ryan Reynolds, Blake's husband, was never entirely comfortable with the closeness between his wife and Taylor, with some alleging that jealousy, pride, and control created friction behind the scenes, and that what the world saw as a glamorous friendship was in reality a battlefield of egos where one side always had to win. And in that battle, it was always Taylor who commanded the spotlight, because the truth is, Taylor Swift does not share the stage. She owns it. She dominates it. She bends the narrative to her will. And maybe Blake thought she could keep up. Maybe she thought their friendship would elevate her alongside Taylor, but instead it consumed her. It drained her. It left her as the side character in a story she once thought she would co-author, and the bitterness that grows from always being in second place can rot even the deepest bond. Some sources painted the picture of Blake trying to outshine Taylor in subtle ways carefully, crafting public appearances, timing her announcements, planning her fashion statements to overlap with Taylor moments. But in the game of fame, Taylor is unbeatable, and every attempt to stand equal only made the difference more obvious. Fans also began to see strange patterns in Blake's choices, like her sudden closeness with other celebrities who had publicly clashed with Taylor. Whispers of calculated alliances, strategic friendships, all designed to weaken the perception of Taylor's invincibility. And yet Taylor only grew stronger. Her albums, her tours, her influence, her love story with Travis Kelce. Everything climbed higher, while Blake sank deeper into silence, and when silence mixes with envy, it begins to look like betrayal. The online firestorm turned vicious. Fans began declaring Blake canceled, calling her two-faced, branding her as the villain in a story where Taylor was the heroine, finally finding her fairy tale ending. But what fans forget is that Hollywood villains are never simple. They are layered, complex, full of contradictions, and maybe Blake is not the villain. Maybe she is the casualty. Maybe she was consumed by a system that thrives on comparison, that devours friendships and replaces them with narratives. Maybe she was broken under the weight of being second best. But in the brutal logic of fame, sympathy rarely survives louder than scandal. So the silence remains, read as guilt every day. Her silence continues. The narrative hardens like concrete until it is unbreakable, until it is fact. And the tragedy of it all is that maybe the truth is far darker. Maybe the silence is not envy or betrayal. Maybe it is fear. Fear of what would be revealed if she spoke, fear of what power Taylor and her team could unleash, fear of being erased completely, because in this world, power is not shared, power is enforced, and right now Taylor Swift holds it all. Her music, her empire, her relationship, her influence, and anyone who stands in her way is crushed into dust. Fans see love and joy. But behind the scenes, it is strategy, precision, calculation, and those who cannot keep up are left behind. Maybe Blake thought she was different. Maybe she believed friendship was immune to the ruthless machine of fame. But now she has learned the cruel truth in Hollywood. Nothing is immune, not even loyalty, not even love. And as the silence stretches on, the suspicion grows sharper, more ruthless, more unforgiving, and the world watches, because the downfall of a friend, the unraveling of a bond, the shattering of an illusion is far more addictive than any fairy tale love story could ever be. The more the silence stretched, the more fans began to realize that this was not a passing moment. This was not some innocent oversight. This was something deliberate, something crafted with intent. And in Hollywood, when something is intentional, it is always calculated. And that is when the whispers of betrayal shifted into accusations of sabotage, because people started digging deeper into the timelines, connecting the dots of when Blake Lively stepped back from the public eye when her appearances with Taylor stopped when her mentions grew scarce, and one pattern stood out. Every time Taylor soared higher, Blake seemed to fade further away. And that is no coincidence, at least not in the eyes of those who follow every move, every headline, every detail. Fans argue that Blake could not stand the empire Taylor was building. Not just in music, not just in love, but in power and influence. An empire so strong it left no room for anyone else to shine. And what is more dangerous than a friend who begins to resent your success? It is a friend who stays silent, plotting in shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to let you fall. Some alleged that Blake had already begun leaking private details to close circles. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to plant seeds of doubt, small stories whispered to certain ears, carefully chosen to chip away at the flawless image of Taylor Swift. And while none of it has been proven, the fact that such rumors exist only fuels the fire. Because in this, world perception is reality, and perception has already branded Blake as the betrayer. Worse still, some pointed to events that now look like warning signs, like the moments when Blake praised Taylor publicly with words that sounded supportive but were delivered with eyes that looked cold, or interviews where she dodged direct questions about their friendship, changing the subject with a smile that no longer reached her eyes. It all adds up. And in the age of digital detectives, nothing goes unnoticed. Nothing is forgotten. And every frame, every word becomes evidence. The internet thrives on conspiracies, and this is the perfect storm. Because it is not just about friendship, it is about loyalty. It is about whether Hollywood relationships are real or carefully manufactured illusions fed to the public to keep them invested. And when the illusion breaks, the audience does not forgive, they demand blood. And right now, the blood they want is Blake Lively's. Her silence has transformed her, from a beloved actress into a symbol of betrayal. And the tragedy is that maybe she never expected it to explode this way. Maybe she thought she could stay quiet and let the storm pass. But in the court of public opinion, silence is not protection. It is an admission. And with each day that passes, the weight of that admission grows heavier. Insiders suggest that behind the scenes, attempts have been made to repair the damage. Private calls, quiet messages, offers to mend what was broken. But those attempts have gone unanswered. Taylor Swift has moved forward without looking back, building a love story that feels untouchable, standing beside Travis Kelce in a union that screams strength, unity, and future, while Blake remains on the outside watching. A life she was once part of unfold without her, and the pain of being excluded, the humiliation of being erased by someone you once stood beside, is unbearable in a world where visibility is survival. Invisibility is death. And Blake is learning that, in the hardest way possible, this story is no longer about an engagement. It is about betrayal so deep it destroys reputations. It is about the end of illusions. It is about the reminder that in Hollywood, nothing is permanent. No bond is sacred. And every silence is a confession. The fans who once adored Blake now dissect her every move, searching for cracks, every appearance, every fashion choice, every caption becomes a clue, and the judgment is merciless because when the narrative has turned against you, there is no escape, no redemption unless you fight back. But Blake has not fought back. She has chosen silence, and silence has become her downfall. The empire of Taylor Swift grows brighter. The fairy tale with Travis Kelce captures the world, but the shadow of betrayal hangs heavier with every passing day. And in that shadow, Blake Lively is no longer seen as the golden star she once was, but as the villain of a story she may not even have written. The silence has now grown so deafening that it is no longer just silence. It has become an accusation. It has become a verdict, written in bold letters across every headline, every tweet, every whisper in every corner of Hollywood and fans who once celebrated Blake Lively. Now question every detail of her career, every decision, every role, and what once looked like talent and charm now looks like strategy, now looks like manipulation, now looks like a desperate attempt to hold on to relevance in a world where Taylor Swift has already claimed the crown. And the more the engagement between Taylor and Travis Kelce shines, the darker Blake appears in comparison. And it is this contrast, this brutal side-by-side exposure, that has destroyed her image more than anything else. Because When one friend ascends into an untouchable fairy tale and the other sinks into shadows, the story writes itself, and no one will believe the shadow is innocent. They will only believe she is envious, and envious friends are the most dangerous enemies. The speculation has spiraled into claims that Blake is not just silent but actively plotting, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal secrets that could tear Taylor's perfect world apart. And while no one knows if that moment will come, the possibility alone has electrified the fan base because nothing sells more than the threat of betrayal. Nothing captures more attention than the idea that the flawless fairy tale could be destroyed from within, and every day Blake remains quiet. The speculation intensifies, and speculation in Hollywood is poison. It spreads faster than truth. It becomes truth. And once it is out there, it can never be taken back. And yet, despite the chaos, despite the growing storm, Taylor continues to move forward, unshaken. Unfazed, smiling, standing hand in hand with Travis as if none of this matters, as if the betrayal does not exist. Or perhaps that is the ultimate power move, to not even acknowledge the whispers, to rise above them, to show the world that no matter what anyone says, the empire stands unbroken, the engagement stands unshaken, and the future stands untouchable. But behind that perfect image, there must be cracks. There must be pain. Because no matter how powerful you are, the sting of betrayal from someone you once trusted can never fully be ignored. And that sting is what keeps fans hooked, because they want to see if the cracks will widen, if the silence will finally break, if Blake will ever step into the light to tell her side, or if she will vanish completely consumed by her own downfall. Some argue that the reason she has remained so quiet is because she knows that any word she speaks will unleash destruction, not only upon herself, but upon everyone involved, because the truth may not just be betrayal. The truth may be far darker, involving alliances, betrayals, deals, and manipulations that the public could not even imagine. And if that truth were to surface, it would not just end a friendship. It would shake the entire image of Hollywood itself. And that is why this silence is so powerful. It is not the absence of words. It is the presence of fear. It is the reminder that the most dangerous truths are the ones never spoken. And so the cycle continues. The engagement of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce remains the fairy tale the world clings to, while the silence of Blake Lively becomes the ghost haunting every corner of that story. A ghost that fans cannot stop chasing, a ghost that will not let them rest because they need an ending. They need resolution. But in Hollywood, endings rarely come. Clean endings are messy, they are bloody, they are shocking, and they leave scars that never heal. And so the story stands unfinished, hanging in the air like a storm that refuses to break the engagement of Taylor Swift. And Travis Kelce continues to glow like an untouchable fairy tale. But the silence of Blake Lively lingers like a curse. It is the unanswered question. It is the shadow that follows every headline, every picture, every song. And the more she stays silent, the louder that shadow grows. Because silence in Hollywood is never empty. It is heavy. It is full of meaning. It is full of secrets. Fans do not forgive silence. They turn it into guilt. They turn it into betrayal. And now that betrayal has taken on a life of its own, becoming bigger than Blake herself, bigger than the friendship that is gone, bigger even than the fairy tale it threatens to haunt. And in that space between truth and lies, between love and betrayal, between silence and confession, the world waits hungry, desperate, ready for the next crack in the perfect image. And whether it comes tomorrow or years from now, it will come. Because in Hollywood, no secret stays buried forever. No silence lasts forever. And when it breaks, when the truth finally spills, it will not just be a whisper. It will be an explosion that shakes everything we thought we knew. And until that day arrives, we are left staring at the golden light of the fairy tale, knowing that just beyond it, in the shadows, something darker waits. Something that will change the story forever.